Earlier, I mentioned about many of the buildings in Bardstown being taken down and service stations being built. In this case, this is the first service station built in Bardstown. It was built by R.H. Edlin, and it replaced the livery stable on the east side of North 3rd. Now, the livery stable is where that fight with Morgan's men took place. So you've got a service station, and service stations often were built on livery stable lots because you went there to rent your horse, and now you're going there to get your car filled up and maybe rent a car if you didn't have it, kind of sort of thing. This is a 1924 picture, and Mr. Diggerson is standing by his dog. On the back of the picture had everybody's name, including the dog's name, Cheeky, and the station manager, Robert Morgan. So this is Robert Morgan, this is Mr. Diggerson, and there's Cheeky, the dog. You'll see over here, this is the Christian church at that point, which is now the Episcopal Church, the Ascension. So this is up where the Luckett Insurance on North 3rd is, right next to where Jonesy's carriage. So I think it's interesting, his carriage shop is right close to where the original livery stable was. As we go on up the street, we're going to see where the, let me see, it was the Central Garage. That's what I want to show you. And Central Garage is, in my memories again, about when the Mr. Brumley had a garage that he repaired. Of course, they all had gas out front that you bought your gas and things, but also he had a garage where he repaired cars, and every Sunday morning after church, my father would go up there to talk to Mr. Brumley. And Central Garage is right here. And I learned early in my life to take a book with me wherever I went with my father, because he was going to talk and I was going to wait. And maybe my love of reading was born then, because I had to wait a lot when he was visiting and talking. So Central Garage and the Brumleys here. This is about 1924 also on that part. I think it's real interesting. The pavement of the garage is smoother than the street. C.R. Barnes had a produce business on East Flagey, right across the Methodist Church. This one, though, is actually farm implements. Today, this is where the Farmers Market building is. We tried to design the Farmers Market building to reflect how this building looked when it was in use. This building this looks like a house. Well, that's part of this whole operation. They actually constructed the other alongside a house. They were in business from the 1870s all the way up to the 1970s, different owners, but Mr. Barnes and his brother operated around turn of the century. Ballard Jewell and others, Jewell and Hayden, operated it there at the last. When Mr. Barnes was there, he told the tale about buying mules. Every year he would go around and he would buy mules and bring them in, and then he'd ship a railroad car full of mules, or more than one if he was lucky, down south to be shipped over to Central America. When I heard the story, I thought, now wait a minute, why are we shipping mules to Central America? Well, they're pretty sturdy, and they actually were very good beasts, a beast of burden, as they say. They withstood the heat, humidity, some of the problems there, and there was a real good market for mules in Central America. Kentucky's known for having produced a lot of mules, and that was one of our cash crops, as they say, back in the 1800s, early 1900s. Today, when you go down there to the farmer's market, you might look around and kind of visualize all those mules waiting to be shipped out in the railroad car, not realizing where they were going to go, and they probably didn't come back. On the same thing with merchandising again, I want to show you this picture. This picture was kind of a mystery to me until I did some research. And it's the Fondlacker and Rosenham store. Mr. Fondlacker, it's really hard to say, Fondlacker, was a Civil War soldier, a Yankee soldier who came in here during the war. He liked Bardstown, and he went back to New York and married his intended, and came back here and went into partnership with Mr. Rosenham and opened a store. They sold all types of merchandise, clothing and all, And this building, this store, is where Aunt Mary's is today, downtown Bardstown. So when you walk around our streets and you look around, our use of the buildings, we are constantly repurposing, reusing, recycling our buildings. And that's why we still have them. We find a use for them. We don't look at them and say, hey, old building, let's get rid of it. We actually look at it and say, how can we use this? And how can we use the character that's in it? So this is about he left here in 1905 because there was a fire that damaged the business, and he decided he would take his family and go back to New York. And the family is still up in New York, descendants. But his children were educated in the Bardstown school system, the early years of the school system, when we were public school, not the present one that you know of, but many years before that. Let's see what else we have. Here's Grigsby & Company. I knew I'd find it if I looked long enough. Okay. Grigsby & Company bought coal. They sold it, delivered it. Now these two buildings here, they were, I mentioned seed, paint. They were a hardware store. They made repairs. Later they would sell appliances. And they started as Carruthers & Company right after the Civil War. William Carruthers and his brother James were partners in this business. They sold it to the Grigsbys in the 1890s, and the Grigsbys brought it on up to the 1970s. This building is where Croom Drug Store is today, and it was built to hold the buggies. It was the buggy part of the business. Buggies were constructed and brought in there and sold. The last one sold was 1934. Now, how do I know all that? I read the newspapers. And I read a lot of newspapers from 1900 to 2000, and in there was the statement about this lady bought the last buggy that was sold there at Grigsby's. Croom Drug Store is using this now as a dispensary for medicine. Across the street, this was where the coal and other things, coal for sure, maybe lumber, but I think mostly coal, would be over in this building. Now today, those are two different offices and apartments there. Again, we recycle our buildings. I want to take you back on Main Street, but I want to first go back to Court Square. I should have done this sooner, but when we came to Court Square, we came right into the center. This is if you come from the west, right here. If you come from the west, you can't see the tavern. The tavern's over here. This building was what we call Lawyers Row. It was built in 1815. It was used up until 1914. The Kentucky Standard started in that building, starting the publication in 2000. So this picture has to be before 1914. Here's your courthouse, very much as it looks today on that place. If we go downtown, we've seen many pictures of the downtown at different times, but I want to go back to one in 1940. An August day in 1940. A lot to see in this picture. This picture was taken by a female photographer who was being paid by the government to go around Kentucky and take pictures. In 1940, we're still in the Depression. We don't come out of the Depression until the war starts. And the government would pay photographers, architects, draftsmen, all types of artists and things as a way of keeping them going and also producing things. Surveys were made, architectural surveys are made here in Kentucky, so we have these wonderful maps and details of old houses and buildings. But this, I found these pictures in the Library of Congress. I was looking for pictures of Bardstown, and we came across this as well as some at St. Thomas that were taken at the same time. Looking north, we are looking from the courthouse north. The business signs on the west side of the main street show the following business. Now here's the west right here, this side. My pencil go. Over here. And these, you can read these signs really clear. They're really good photographs. But the Lawson Restaurant, which is today Jack and Jill is in that building, our Lawson Restaurant. It operated in different locations for 77 years. It would move from one spot to another. And it was known for its ice cream, for its desserts. in its fountain service. Today we take all that for granted, but ice cream was a real treat. Has always been a real treat, and I guess it still is. Right next to the Lawsons was the Old Kentucky Home Sweet Shop Restaurant. This was the site of the Chamber of Commerce meetings. It was a meeting place, a luncheon for guests of the John Fitch Monument unveiling, the DAR antique shows, and private parties through the 1920s and 30s. Tom Pig's Restaurant, which operated here since 1927. Tom Pig's Restaurant would burn in, I can't tell you the year. I'm sorry about that. I should remember that. That building's the only one on that side of the street that's not there, that has had any damage to it that had to be torn down and rebuilt. But it was burned. Tom Pig's went from here north on 3rd Street and then out on Bloomfield Road. Mr. Tom Pig, how do you like that? But Tom Pig was the nickname of Thomas Stoker. And he put it on his restaurant, and it was a very important place. A lot of people, it stayed open all night. So if you wanted the police or you wanted some help or the fire department, you called Tom Pig's Restaurant, and he located the policeman or set the alarm or whatever you did for the fire. At the end of the block was the Rexall drugstore all the way down here. And that was, different pharmacists have been dispensing drugs there since 1940. Today, that's the Ever D. Jones building. On the same August day, this view of the east side, we're over here now, shows the Crystal Theater. And this is this building right here. Sticks out the marquee there. The Crystal Theater was the early 1930s. It was operated upstairs for a while, then came down here. You had the Crystal Theater, it had the silent movies. And in the theater, on the second floor, the silent movies would play, and Mary B. Croom, who is Hal Moore's, General Moore's mother. Mary B. Croom, and of course she married, now her name's Moore, but as a young girl, she would play the piano for the silent movies. And I asked her, when you were playing this, did you have a list of what was going to happen so you'd know what kind of music to play? A silent movie has the chase music, it has the romance music, it has the suspense music and all. She said, no, we're in the dark, I couldn't have read it anyway. She said, I'd watch the movie and I'd play what I thought the movie was telling me to play. So I found that very interesting, that she's sitting there playing away, watching the movie and deciding what the next music's going to be. Going north, you'll see the iron balcony that supplied the second floor apartments with a hallway and a porch. Now what's interesting there today, if you will go downtown and you step on this side of the street and you look over here, you'll see that these doors, there are doors in that building that don't go anywhere. If you open the door, you're going to step right out out into nothing. But in this picture, there's an iron balcony there. And when that building was built, that's how you went from this door over to that door. It was a hallway, an access, probably for fire protection too. They took the balcony off and didn't put anything back. So they have two doors to nowhere, as they say. The Louisville store, you can see the sign right here. Louisville store was a department store operated by the Shapiro family of Louisville, the same Shapiro family that now operates Heaven Hill Distillery, owns and operates that. And then the DX sign, which is way up here, right there. That's the Stephen Foster Hotel, the DX service station right next door. So that is 1940, which is not that many years away, actually. 75, 40, and 74. 74 years away. So we keep it on that. On the same idea about change, this particular picture is two buildings that were taken down to build Wilson Muir Bank. You can see one of them is already Wilson Muir, this one. And this was known as the Farm and Home Company. This was like an insurance and savings place. They just had a small bank. Nah, it wasn't a small bank, it just was a small building, I should say. Had stairs that went up, you had dentists that operated up here, and over here was Demery and Hubbard, Eugene Wilson. And then when they took these down and they built their new bank, this is an interesting picture. Right, if you see, this bank is right there. 1937, they had a Mule Day in Bardstown, and people brought their mules in and their horses in, and they would trade them, at least look them over and compliment them, or say they weren't much, however it wanted to go. But this shows these two beautiful white, I guess they're white mules. I didn't know there was such a thing. Did you ever see a white mule? Don't know. But those are some of the fun pictures we find. The same way, this is the Newberry picture. This is the Crystal Building. When I said earlier about the Crystal Theater, well, the Crystal Theater closed, and J.J. Newberry's used all of that space on the first floor of that same building. And for many, many years it was there. Today, Shaq and Coco are right there where you could buy Easter candy or toys, needles, thumbtacks, and all at J.J. Newberry, and now you can buy wonderful furnishings and unusual things there. One more downtown of 1960. I went from 40 to 60. This is a postcard, and what's interesting and why I know the date, Kennedy and Johnson, there's a banner across the street promoting the election of Robert F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. And that was the first election, I think, that I got to vote in on that part. But those are Main Street pictures. I mentioned earlier these books that we have. The Nelson County Historical Society put this Nelson County 1785-2010 together. We have a few of these books left. There's 1,200 pictures in this one. This was published in 2010, of course. What am I saying? That way. But that's where people shared their pictures and things with us. This one is Nelson County, a Pictorial History, that was published in 1989. And this actually was the first book that I ever wrote. I've written many articles, but this was a hardcover book, and so it was the first of 14. But this one's been out of print for a long time. There are a few copies left. There may be 2 or 3 I could find if someone were interested on that. The main thing about showing old pictures and stimulating your interest is to get you to go look around it today. Look at what you have in our community, in your neighborhood. It doesn't even have to be Main Street, Bardstown. Go see the older buildings, the barns, the public buildings, commercial buildings. Look at how they've changed, because none of them are exactly like they were when they were built, because all of them had to be electrified, central heat, new doors, bigger windows. In Bardstown, there's a little building on North 3rd, right next to Cresso's restaurant, that has 2 business sections. And it's the oldest commercial building in town. It's probably in 1810. And it actually was renovated because it had bigger glass windows put in it in 1890. So even if you're a small cottage kind of building, if there's a need for you, or a place where someone wants to rent you and sell something from it, they'll take it over, they'll maintain you, preserve what's there, utilize it, and then someone else will come along and do the same thing again. That's what history is all about. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Whatever we did yesterday, we're going to do today, and I hope we continue doing it tomorrow, because it's in the best interest of everyone to preserve our past and plan for our future. I hope you've enjoyed our little picture tour through downtown Bardstown.